In the Middle Ages, death was neither quick nor merciful. It dragged on for weeks, turning into a slow, agonizing disappearance under the indifferent gazes of servants, relatives, and an even more indifferent history. Your life, once full of palace intrigues, passions, and betrayals, shrinks to the size of a sickbed, the tolling of a bell outside the window, and the prayers of strangers from whom you no longer expect salvation. But before you get comfortable, please like this video and subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is for you. I'm really curious to see who has joined us. Now, make yourself comfortable. We're about to begin. You wake up in the dim light of a stone chamber that has never known warmth, not in all your years, and certainly not this morning. Your body feels heavy, as if you are wearing an invisible wet cloak that seeps into your bones. The bed, a supposed luxury with its thick tapestries and worn silks, is just another version of the same chill that creeps from the ancient walls. You hear the faint scurrying of mice behind the wainscoting, a detail both beneath your station and yet inescapably familiar. Every castle is infested with something. Somewhere in the corridors outside your chamber, the servants move. They think you cannot hear them, but you have been queen and queen mother long enough to know that nothing escapes your attention, except perhaps your own declining health. Their footsteps are muffled. The click of their shoes is cautious, careful not to disturb you. Perhaps they have noticed something different about you this morning. Or perhaps they are just tired of your presence, a burden as much as a relic. You would not blame them. Sunlight sneaks through a slit in the thick, grimy glass, revealing the fine dust floating in the air. This is a medieval luxury, this glass, a symbol of progress, of civilization, of separation from the stink and misery outside. Yet the light it offers is mean and gray. You see motes swirling, each a little piece of the world that will eventually settle in your lungs. You cough politely, as if excusing yourself from a tedious conversation. You wait for breakfast, but the servants are slow. Perhaps they are nervous. Perhaps they are discussing you, as they always do. The day begins, as every day begins, with the soft clatter of pewter plates, the distant drone of voices in the kitchens, the rhythmic bell signaling the hours. Time in the palace is as circular as a rosary: prayer, food, duty, sleep, and always the interminable waiting. You have not felt excitement in years, nor pain, except the dull, familiar ache in your joints, the one that seems to have gotten worse as winter crept closer. You force yourself to sit up, wincing. Your hair is tangled, caught in the knotty embroidery of the pillowcase. Your nightgown, once white, now sags yellowed and gray at the cuffs. You once cared about these things. You once cared about a great many things. Now you care only for the way your bones protest and the strange, sour taste in your mouth. You recall, briefly, what it was to be feared and admired. The Lioness of France, they called you once. Now you are simply Isabella, another body occupying space, another aging figurehead waiting for a conclusion that everyone else has already begun to anticipate. The stories they tell of you are half forgotten. The ones you tell yourself are worse, dull, repetitive, full of regrets and half remembered triumphs. You suspect you are more myth than woman, but your flesh is stubbornly real, and this morning it aches. You try not to think about sickness. Everyone is always sick, or soon will be. The physicians make a performance of their ignorance, wrapping it in Latin and leeches. The priests make a performance of their certainty, wrapping it in prayers and incense. You are not certain of anything except that you do not want to see either, not today. You want only to eat, perhaps to walk if you feel stronger later, perhaps to watch the crows fight over scraps in the yard. But there is no food, not yet. The servants come in at last, carrying a tray. The bread is stale, the cheese gray at the edges, the wine sour. This is what passes for comfort. You take a bite out of obligation. Your jaw aches, but you chew, because queens are not allowed to starve, not even in their own beds. You stare at the cold stone walls, the endless pattern of tapestries and shadows, and wonder, not for the first time, if you are already dead. It is hard to tell the difference some mornings. Life in the palace is a kind of slow motion dying, an endless rehearsal for the moment when you will finally slip away and become nothing but a line in a chronicle. You cough again, and this time you taste blood. You lie back and close your eyes. The day has barely begun, and already you are tired. You listen to the distant sound of the chapel bell, the faint scraping of rats, the gossip of the servants in the hall. You try to remember if you have ever been truly well, if you have ever woken without pain or fear. You cannot. You drift, half asleep, already dreading the next waking. The palace is waiting. Everyone is waiting. So are you. The heaviness that draped itself over you this morning refuses to leave. You try to rise, but your legs answer only with a protest of dull fire along the knees and hips. It would be flattering to think this pain is the punishment of the heavens for your long ago crimes, if only you believed heaven paid such close attention. Instead, you resign yourself to the more likely explanation that your body, like every stone and tapestry in this palace, is slowly decaying. You drag yourself to the small window and watch the world. Paris is distant, but the rumors from its heart crawl through these walls like an uninvited wind. There are whispers, always whispers, pestilence in the streets, fever in the slums, the gnawing, patient hunger that stalks all of Christendom. You wonder idly which variety will be the one to finish you. It is hardly an original fate. You are reminded at every turn by the blackened teeth of the servants, by the soft coughs behind their hands, by the endless funerals muttered through city gates. That sickness is the only real certainty. A physician visits you before noon, a man whose name you can never recall. You notice how careful he is not to touch anything directly. He carries his tools in a leather bag that smells faintly of rosemary and something darker. He looks at you with practiced solemnity. He asks about your sleep, your appetite, your bowels. His questions are so deeply impersonal, you almost laugh. You answer them all because it is what you are meant to do. He listens to your chest with his ear pressed against a linen cloth, as if your breath might contain the secret to immortality, or at least to a slightly less embarrassing death. He prescribes you a tea made from dried sage and nettles. He recommends a poultice of honey and goat's fat to be applied to your chest. He speaks the Latin names of your ailments as if reciting a spell, but his eyes are tired, and you know, as he does, that nothing in his arsenal will help. In the end, he tells you to pray. He always tells you to pray. When the physician leaves, you feel more alone than before. It is as if he took some vital part of you with him, or perhaps simply reminded you that it was never really there. You try to pray, but the words are hollow, echoing in the vast cathedral of your memory. You remember the prayers you once whispered as a child, in a different castle, in a different life, when illness was the sort of thing that happened to other people. You do not remember if they ever worked. As the day shuffles along, so do you. You force yourself to eat. The food is worse than before. Yesterday's bread, reheated stew with lumps of fat floating on the surface. Each bite is an effort. You recall a feast from years ago, platters of roasted pheasant, sweetmeats shaped like fruits, eels jellied in wine. The memory is so vivid it makes you sick. You put down your spoon and push the plate away. You are not hungry, not really, and it is better to let the food go to waste than to give your illness another foothold. By afternoon, the servants have become even quieter. Their eyes flicker over you with something that is not quite pity, not quite fear. They bow lower, speak more softly, linger just a moment longer, as if waiting for instructions you no longer know how to give. You realize they are waiting for you to die. Not immediately, perhaps, but soon. Everyone in the palace is waiting for you to die, even you. The wind rattles the glass in your window. Somewhere in the corridors below, a dog barks, sharp and persistent. You imagine it gnawing a bone, oblivious to the slow tragedy unfolding above. You envy it. Outside, you see the city smudged against the horizon, streets that you once rode through in triumph, now choked with smoke and mud and disease. You feel your world shrinking with each passing hour. By evening, your thoughts are interrupted by another visitor, a priest this time, sent by someone who means well or simply wishes to hasten your soul on its way. He enters with the ritual dignity of one who knows he is performing for the living rather than the dying. He asks if you have made peace with your God. You tell him you are still working on it. He laughs, just a little. He places a cold, heavy hand on your forehead, mutters a prayer, and assures you that everything is in God's hands. You are not sure if this is meant to be comforting. Night falls, slow and clumsy, like an old cat climbing onto your bed. You lie in the darkness, counting your own breaths, wondering which one will be your last. The ache in your bones is worse now. You try to remember what it was like to move without pain, to speak without thinking about death, to imagine a future that was more than a day or two ahead. Your sleep, when it comes, is thin and restless, crowded with feverish dreams. You wake often, drenched in sweat, convinced that your time is finally up. But each time, you are still here, still waiting. Outside, the city groans in its misery. Inside, you lie still, listening to your own body failing, bit by bit. Illness has come, and you know, with the weary certainty of the old and the unloved, that it will not be leaving without you. You have always disliked priests, even when you were supposed to love them. Their presence in your life has been like the persistent mold on the north wall of your bedchamber, a silent, creeping inevitability, tolerated for the sake of appearance, but never welcomed. When you were young and the world felt brighter, you could avoid them for days or even weeks, inventing some new intrigue or diplomatic emergency to shield you from their droning sermons. Now you are a prisoner of your own body, and there is nowhere left to hide. The word arrives late in the morning. The priest will come soon. You do not remember summoning him, though it is possible you did. Your mind wanders now in uncomfortable directions, circling memories you would rather avoid. Perhaps someone else decided you were overdue for a reminder of the next world, or perhaps you are simply too ill to keep your preferences known. It is all the same in the end. When he arrives, the priest brings with him the unmistakable scent of old incense, damp wool, and resignation. His robes are threadbare at the hem, his eyes shadowed by sleeplessness or boredom. He bows so deeply that you almost think he will fall. You do not return the gesture. You have forgotten how to bend without pain. Your Grace, he says, voice so soft you almost do not hear it. It is time to speak with God. As if you had ever stopped. The truth is that God, like the King of France or the plague, visits when he pleases and never when you would prefer. The priest draws a stool to your bedside and sits with the weariness of a man who has knelt by too many deathbeds. He produces a small, battered book and begins to read. Latin phrases wash over you, familiar in their emptiness. You know the rituals by heart: confession, contrition, absolution, the choreography of the dying. You remember learning them as a girl, reciting prayers in a cold chapel while your father and his court pretended at holiness. Nothing has changed except perhaps your patience. He asks you to confess. You smile just a little. Where would you begin? With the betrayals and intrigues, the broken promises, the things you did for love or for power, or simply because you could. The list is as endless as your boredom. You confess what you must, omitting what you can. He does not press. He is not here for the truth. He is here to mark your passage, to shuffle your soul along like a tired usher at the back of a theater, one more performance to endure before he can go home. The priest produces a flask of oil, thick and pungent. He anoints your forehead and hands, The sensation is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. It is simply another step in the process. You listen to the prayers, their cadence lulling you into a kind of trance. The words are less important than the silence that follows. You are supposed to feel comforted, but you feel only more alone. He asks if you would like to take the Eucharist. You hesitate, not out of doubt, but out of exhaustion. The bread is stale, the wine sour. He insists gently, as if speaking to a child. You acquiesce. The taste of the host is dry and clings to your tongue. You wonder, with the idle curiosity of someone who has nothing left to lose, whether this ritual will make any difference at all. You suspect it will not. When the priest is done, he lingers for a moment, as if expecting you to ask for something. You do not. He blesses you and leaves, his footsteps echoing in the corridor. The air feels heavier in his absence, or perhaps you are simply more aware of your own breath, shallow and uneven. You close your eyes and try to pray, but your mind drifts again, wandering to places the priest's prayers cannot reach. You remember sins both small and large, a harsh word to a servant, a letter destroyed before it could bring trouble, a night spent whispering secrets to a man you should never have trusted. You wonder if any of it matters now. The priest would say yes, of course, that is his job. But you have lived long enough to know that the world keeps spinning, regardless of the weight of your conscience. Outside your window, the world is as indifferent as ever. You hear the distant bells of the chapel tolling for someone else's misfortune. You wonder how many times those bells have rung for you already, how many times they will ring again before the end. You imagine the sound continuing long after you are gone, each note as empty and inevitable as the last. After the priest, your ladies in waiting arrive, faces pinched with worry and curiosity. They hover by the door, whispering amongst themselves. You can almost hear the conversation. Has she confessed? Did she seem afraid? How much longer do you think? You want to tell them you are not afraid, but you are tired of reassuring people who do not truly care. Instead, you close your eyes and pretend to sleep. This, too, is a ritual. The afternoon drags by in a haze of incense and muttered prayers. Occasionally, you catch a snatch of conversation from the hallway, someone discussing the preparations for your funeral as if you cannot possibly hear. You almost laugh at the efficiency. Even in death, there is protocol to follow, forms to complete, candles to count. The evening brings another visit from the priest. He looks even more exhausted than before. You wonder if he is paid by the hour or by the soul. He repeats the prayers, and you repeat the responses, the two of you locked in a dance as old as the stones of the palace. You realize, with a kind of grim amusement, that you are not really afraid of death at all. You are afraid of the endless boredom that comes before it. By nightfall, your room smells of oil, sweat, and old promises. You lie in bed, eyes fixed on the canopy above you, tracing the pattern of moth holes and faded gold thread. You wonder if God is watching, if the priest's prayers have bought you even a moment of mercy. You doubt it. More likely, God is as bored as you are, waiting for the end so that something new might begin. As you drift into uneasy sleep, you realize the rituals are not for you or for God. They are for the living, those left behind to make sense of your absence. You are already halfway gone, a shadow among shadows, and all the prayers in Christendom will not bring you back. The next morning greets you with the stifling closeness of old linens and stale air. You are not sure whether you slept or simply drifted, as if your soul was pacing the flagstones beside your bed all night, waiting for your body to surrender. You open your eyes to a patch of ceiling that has not changed in 20 years. Gray, flaking, inscribed with ghostly shadows of water stains and centuries old cobwebs. Someone is at your bedside. The rustle of cloth, the low Latin murmurs, the careful, deliberate touch on your wrist. You are being examined, prodded, and assessed like a rare animal whose habits must be recorded for some future chronicler. The palace physician is there, this time with an apprentice trailing behind, clutching a wooden tray of mysterious instruments and half-filled jars. You see in the young man's eyes a mixture of terror and boredom, as if he is witnessing history and can barely keep himself awake. The physician, Master Gautier, you now recall, for he has served the court since your hair was black, leans close. He smells of camphor and onions, two scents that have haunted you for years, and possibly the two most reliable medicines in his arsenal. He greets you with a bow so deep that his knees crack, then proceeds with the solemn ritual of diagnosis. He asks you, in a voice carefully stripped of hope, how you have slept. You tell him what he wants to hear, which is nothing at all. He presses his cold fingers to your wrist, counting your pulse. He asks you to open your mouth and say, "Ah," then leans in as if he expects to find the secrets of the universe written on your tongue. He inspects your eyes, asks if you can see his fingers waving before your face. You can, but you pretend you cannot, just to watch him squirm. He listens to your breathing, ear pressed to a square of linen held over your chest, then frowns in a manner so practiced you wonder if he rehearses in front of a mirror. The apprentice scribbles notes, presumably in Latin, though you suspect it is just a record of which pious herbs have been thrown at which patient this week. Master Gautier gestures for the tray, and now the real fun begins. He takes out a tiny, wicked-looking knife and announces it is time to let the humors. You are reminded, not for the first time, that medieval medicine is mostly a way to make suffering more complicated. Still, you offer your arm with the resignation of a martyr. You have seen this play before. A bowl is placed beneath your elbow. The physician nicks your skin, not too deep, not too shallow. The blood trickles, slow and thick, and entirely unimpressed by the gravity of the occasion. Gautier nods gravely, as if this particular shade of blood is a sign from the heavens. The excess heat must be released, he intones. The body will find balance. The apprentice looks away, a little green around the edges. You watch your blood gather in the bowl and wonder how many times the same blood has soaked these same sheets. How many times your ancestors have played out the same scene, each generation convinced that the next will be smarter. After the bloodletting comes the parade of remedies. There is a syrup of violets meant to calm your fever, a poultice of mashed garlic and honey smeared across your chest until you smell like a poorly kept kitchen. There are leeches, always leeches, their slippery bodies pressed to your skin in hopes that their appetite for suffering will outstrip your own. You name each one after an old enemy and wish them luck. None of this is meant to cure you, and everyone knows it. Medicine in your time is a dance, one performed for the comfort of the living, not the benefit of the dying. Still, the routine must be respected. Gautier murmurs about the importance of good air and recommends opening the window despite the February chill. The apprentice brings in a fresh bowl of posies and rosemary, the scents meant to purify the air. You sneeze, then cough, the phlegm a dull red against your handkerchief. You hear the physician confer with his apprentice as they pack up. They discuss your humors, your bile, the color of your tongue, and the riddle of your urine. You wonder if they will write a treatise on your symptoms. A notable case, one of them mutters. Royal blood. You feel oddly proud, though you suspect you are about to become a footnote in someone else's medical career. The door closes, and you are left alone with your bandaged arm, your sweating brow, and the growing conviction that you are more object than person. You recall the illustrations in those heavy, leather bound medical texts. Wretched figures, half dressed, splayed out on beds, their suffering rendered in meticulous ink. Some are surrounded by learned men, their faces carved with frowns of theoretical concern. Some are visited by saints who hover uselessly above the bed. You always found those pictures faintly ridiculous. Now you find them prescient. The rest of the morning blurs into ritual. The chambermaids change your linens, carrying away the blood-stained sheets with pinched noses and muttered prayers. They replace them with fresh linen that still smells faintly of lye and smoke. Your body feels colder, emptier, as if some essential part has been drawn out with the blood. You suppose it has. Food arrives, untouched and quickly growing cold. You sip weak broth, nibble at a crust of bread, and find both tasteless. You imagine your stomach is as unimpressed as your tongue. Somewhere down the corridor, you hear the muffled clatter of servants preparing for the next round of visitors. Another doctor, another priest, another day measured in degrees of decline. As evening falls, you catch your reflection in the glass of your window. A pale, drawn face framed by sweat-soaked hair. You look less like a queen than one of those anatomical drawings. Eyes too large, skin drawn tight, mouth a thin, uncertain line. You are both subject and object, the center of attention and the least important figure in the room. You wonder if, centuries from now, a physician will look at your portrait and guess what killed you. They will probably be wrong. It will not matter. The day ends as it began, with the distant sound of footsteps, the quiet closing of doors, and the sense that your story has been reduced to a list of symptoms. You are no longer Isabella, Queen of England and France, daughter of kings, mother of dynasties. You are simply a case study, one more sick body in a world that barely knows how to heal. A strange lethargy settles over you, not the dignified resignation of a queen facing her end, but the dull, mindless apathy of someone who has lost even the energy to care about her own story. You would like to think of your illness as tragic, or at least as noble, but in truth, it is just tedious. Even the pain in your joints and the fever that comes and goes feel less urgent than the sheer monotony of it all. You stare at the ceiling and wish for something, anything, that would break the pattern. But your title will not let you disappear. No matter how much you try to fade into your linens, to melt into the tapestries, to simply become part of the furniture, your status demands attention. You are still Isabella of France, the she-wolf, the queen who once moved armies and toppled kings. And so, the world insists on remembering you, even as you begin to forget yourself. The day's first visitors are not healers, but courtiers, relatives, ministers, advisors. Their voices carry the crisp tones of politics, sharp and brittle as winter branches. They file in one by one, some with genuine concern etched into their brows, others with the forced gravity of those fulfilling a tiresome duty. A cousin lingers at the end of your bed, speaking of your estates in Gascony and your pension from the English exchequer, as if these were the only things about you worth preserving. Another offers news of the court, but only the sort that has been scrubbed clean of scandal, as if your illness is contagious in more ways than one. You watch their faces, noting which ones seem disappointed by your continued breathing. Some are too polite to say it, others have never been good at hiding their ambitions. You realize, with a flicker of old amusement, that your dying has become a kind of entertainment, a distraction from their own small fears. You want to tell them that dying is every bit as dull as living, only slower and more humiliating. The talk, when it is not about property or pensions, turns inevitably to succession. You are not so far gone that you cannot follow the thread. Which daughter, which nephew, which alliance will benefit most from your absence? They speak in low voices, sometimes glancing over to see if you are awake. You close your eyes, but their words creep in anyway. Even your death, it seems, is to be an act of statecraft. There are also the servants, now more attentive than ever. They bring fresh linens, clean your chamber pot with exaggerated care, and fluff the pillows around your aching limbs. Their faces are masks of concern, but you know the truth. You are less a person than a duty, one that grows more urgent with every day you linger. Each task is performed with the mechanical efficiency of those who have watched many nobles die and expect to watch many more. Every now and then, a younger servant pauses by your side, perhaps hoping for a sign, a word, a blessing. You would like to offer something: wisdom, kindness, even a joke. But all you can manage is a faint smile. You are not sure they want comfort anyway. Your presence is more lesson than warning. This, too, will be you someday, no matter how many floors you scrub or how carefully you avoid the notice of the great and powerful. Midday brings the inevitable discussion of your will. Scribes arrive, their quills already inked, and you are asked to confirm this estate, that pension, these trinkets. You nod where appropriate, sign where needed. The process is as impersonal as a merchant's ledger. You almost wish for an argument, a scandal, some small reminder that your life once mattered. But everyone is too polite for that, or too tired. Even the scribes seem bored, their eyes wandering over the walls as they wait for you to finish dying. When the paperwork is done, a hush falls over the room. The courtiers retreat, the servants vanish, and for a moment you are alone again. You try to summon tears, or anger, or at least a memory of what it was like to feel either. Nothing comes. The only thing that feels real is the ache in your bones and the faint, sour taste of mortality on your tongue. Afternoon drags by. Outside, you hear the bells from the chapel, the distant clatter of hooves on the frozen earth, the laughter of someone in the courtyard. Life goes on, endlessly indifferent. You watch the shifting patterns of sunlight on the floor, tracing the journey of a day you will not remember tomorrow. A physician arrives, but only to check your pulse and your pupils. His questions are perfunctory. His interest is elsewhere. He offers a new potion, something bitter, promised to ease your fever. You drink it dutifully, though you doubt it will help. He offers a prayer for your comfort, then flees before you can ask what comfort actually means. Twilight gathers in your chamber, painting the walls with long shadows. You remember suddenly the evenings of your youth, the thrill of court, the dangerous pleasure of secrets whispered in the dark, the sense that anything might happen. Now, the only secrets are those muttered by the servants behind the door, and the only excitement is wondering whether you will live to see the morning. Your body aches with a deeper, more insistent fatigue. Every movement feels like a negotiation with pain. You turn your face to the window, searching for something beyond the stone and glass. For a moment, you see a bird, a solitary raven, perched on the ledge. It cocks its head as if weighing the value of your existence. Then, with a careless flick of its wings, it is gone. Night falls again, heavy and implacable. The palace creaks and sighs around you, as if settling into its own long sleep. Somewhere below, the courtiers are toasting your health, or your death, or perhaps both. You drift into sleep, your dreams blank and untroubled. In the end, even your apathy is interrupted by your title, a final, pointless privilege that refuses to let you disappear quietly. The palace is alive with movement, even if you are not. You become acutely aware of the floorboards, their constant creaking and groaning, as if they too are tired of bearing the weight of centuries and secrets. Each footstep outside your chamber becomes an announcement. Someone is coming, someone is leaving, someone is pausing by your door to murmur a report, a rumor, a prayer, or perhaps just a sigh of relief that it is not yet their turn to join you in this interminable vigil. You lie very still, your senses sharpening in the absence of activity. It is remarkable how much you can hear when you stop caring about what is being said. A cluster of ladies in waiting shuffle down the corridor, their hushed voices leaking through the heavy wood like smoke through a thatched roof. They think themselves discreet, but you can make out every syllable. She looked worse today, do you think? Her eyes are so dull, like glass marbles. They say her breath rattles at night. You want to shout that you can hear them, that you are not yet dead, but the effort does not seem worth it. Let them gossip. You are past the point of defending your dignity from whispers. Men's voices follow, lower, more urgent, your son's advisors, you think, or perhaps your own, though you no longer keep track of which alliance belongs to which ambition. They speak in the language of the powerful, all conditional verbs and indirect threats. If she passes soon, we must secure the treaty. The dowager's properties cannot fall to the crown. It is in the will. Someone must check. Do you think she has confessed everything? There are things best left unsaid. The conversation is as impersonal as the accounting of spoons in the pantry. At intervals, the wooden floorboards emit a long, exhausted sigh under heavier boots. Perhaps a physician, perhaps the bailiff, perhaps just a guard checking that the she-wolf is truly confined. You find yourself grateful for the interruptions, even if they bring nothing but more talk of your slow decline. There is a curious comfort in being observed, in knowing that even your dying is part of the machinery that keeps this place running. Your body has become a kind of weather, a topic for polite conversation and not so polite speculation. Sometimes you hear children playing far down the hall, their laughter wild and oblivious. You remember a time when you too ran through corridors, when every door held a secret and every shadow was a potential ally or enemy. Now the children are just another noise, as distant and irrelevant as the bells from the city church. You notice that as the day wanes, the footsteps become fewer, but heavier, more deliberate. Visitors pause longer outside your door, their conversations hushed to near silence. You catch the scent of perfume, of oil, of sweat. Someone, your niece, your granddaughter, peeks in, offers a perfunctory smile, and leaves before you can muster the energy to speak. It is as if everyone is afraid that being in the room too long might make them ill as well, or at least force them to contemplate their own endings. In the late afternoon, a new pattern emerges. Footsteps approach, stop, retreat, return again. These are the cautious, measured movements of those who have something to say, but cannot decide whether it is worth the trouble. Eventually, two ministers enter, arguing softly about your funeral arrangements. They discuss hymns, the order of the procession, the color of the candles. You watch them as one watches a pair of crows debating over carrion, half amused, half resigned. They are not speaking to you, only about you, and even then, only as a problem to be solved. One of them mentions the fate of your jewels, another the division of your lands. You remember each piece, each field, each disputed boundary. Once, these things were your tools, bargaining chips, tokens of favor or punishment. Now they are just lines on a map, names in a ledger. The ministers bow to you on their way out, more out of habit than respect. You try to nod in return, but the motion is too much. You settle for a blink. The evening brings more footsteps, more voices. Some are hopeful. She seemed a little stronger tonight, did she not? Others quietly desperate. If only she would linger until the new moon, it would be better for the harvest. You marvel at the petty calculations that surround your demise. Your health has become a weather vane, your pulse a harbinger of taxes and inheritances and border skirmishes. Eventually, the footsteps dwindle, and you are left with the sighing silence of old stone and older regrets. Yet, even in the quiet, you hear movement, the gentle scrape of a chair as a servant settles in for the night, the distant clatter of a plate in the kitchens, the soft shush of a brush against the hearth. Life, it seems, continues whether you are watching or not. You wonder briefly what would happen if you simply stood up and walked out of your chamber, healthy and whole. Would anyone notice, or would they carry on discussing your inevitable demise until you finally gave them what they wanted? The thought is both absurd and strangely comforting. You are a ghost haunting your own life, listening to the floorboards and the people above them, all marching toward the same end. As night falls, you close your eyes and let the palace move around you. The floorboards groan, the walls sigh, the world spins indifferently onward. You lie still, an island of fading memory in a sea of restless noise. The only thing you are certain of is that, for now, you are still here, still listening, still a part of the story, whether anyone else remembers or not. It is remarkable how illness narrows your world to the dimensions of a single bed and a single breath, yet expands your memory to fill the entire sweep of your life. As your body fails, your mind turns backward, and you find yourself wandering through rooms long since abandoned, speaking to people whose names are half lost even to you. The present becomes less important than the parade of ghosts who visit you, uninvited and unstoppable. Lying in this bed, you remember what it was to be young, and more importantly, what it was to believe that youth could last forever. You see yourself not as you are now, frail and shivering under rough linen, but as you were, Isabella, daughter of Philip the Fair, raised in the shadow of Parisian stone and royal expectation. The memory is so sharp it stings. You remember feasts in glittering halls, where candles dripped wax like honey, and laughter rolled from one tapestry to the next. You see yourself twirling beneath the watchful eyes of courtiers, your gown heavy with jewels, your heart lighter than it ever would be again. You recall the feel of silk against your skin, the prickle of envy in other girls' eyes, the whispered promises of knights whose swords were as quick as their smiles. Your childhood was a pageant of privilege and peril, both. Every word spoken to you was a test, every kindness a negotiation. Even as a girl, you understood that affection came with a price. Your father, Philip, was a man carved from marble, as cold as he was magnificent. He taught you to calculate, to listen, to watch for weakness in others, and hide it in yourself. It was not a gentle education, but it was thorough. You remember, too, your betrothal, a transaction dressed in the language of destiny. England's crown was a distant, alien thing. Its king, Edward, a shadowy figure in a tapestry of politics and gold. You traveled across the sea with a retinue so grand that peasants lined the roads for miles. You imagined adventure. What you found was disappointment. The court was smaller, colder, the king more boy than monarch, easily swayed by flatterers and favorites. You learned quickly that marriage was its own kind of exile. There are memories you try to avoid, but tonight they come anyway. The betrayals, both given and received. You remember Mortimer's voice in the darkness, thick with ambition and tenderness. You remember the long hours of plotting, the thrill of being needed, the constant risk. For a time, you were more than a consort, more than a mother. You were a power in your own right, feared and courted, despised and obeyed. Sometimes you wonder whether you regret it. You decide you do not. Your mind drifts to your children, their faces shifting from the sharp outlines of youth to the indistinct features of distant adults. You remember their first cries, the sticky kisses, the bruises from childhood tumbles. You remember the cold formality that crept in as they grew, the way duty always stood between you and any real warmth. You recall the disappointment in their eyes, perhaps a reflection of your own. Regret is a poison, slow and corrosive. You feel it seep through you now, mixing with the bitterness in your blood. You wish you had been kinder, or at least more honest. You wish you had chosen love instead of necessity, but even now, you know that such choices were never truly yours. History is written in the margins of men's lives, and you are always the footnote, never the author. As you remember, you feel the old pulse of anger, still alive somewhere beneath the layers of exhaustion and pain. You are not the story they tell in their chronicles. You are not the she-wolf of their lazy legends, nor the pious dowager of their prayers. You are complicated, sometimes ruthless, sometimes foolish, sometimes just desperately lonely. You wonder if anyone will remember that. The room around you is unchanged, heavy with the scent of illness and faded privilege. But for a moment, in the privacy of your mind, you are young again. You see the Seine glinting under a Parisian sunrise. You hear the laughter of old friends lost to plague and betrayal. You remember the freedom of running, the danger of wanting, the strange delight of being feared. Someone coughs outside your chamber, and you are dragged back to the present, to the too bright candlelight and the careful footsteps of servants. The world you built and broke is far away now, receding with every hour. Your name is on the lips of others, but your story is already out of your hands. You close your eyes and try to summon one more memory, a taste, a voice, a moment of joy unmarred by politics or pain. It comes, briefly, the sound of your mother singing, the weightless flight of a bird above the river, the feeling of possibility. Then it too is gone. You lie very still, surrounded by ghosts, unable to decide if you miss them or envy them. Your youth is a country you cannot return to, a language you no longer speak. All that is left is the slow, measured rhythm of your breath and the knowledge that you were once so much more than the sum of your dying. The palace is old, older than you ever fully realized when you were young and distracted by the pageantry of power. Now, confined to your bed, with the daily tapestry of courtly intrigue fading from your grasp, you have nothing but time to study the minutiae of your cell. The ceiling becomes your sky, and you know every crack and water stain, every patch where the plaster buckles and sags, every arching cobweb that spans the beams like a banner of defeat. These cracks, you decide, are the true historians. They have seen it all. Your eyes trace the longest of them, a pale line that runs above your head and then branches into smaller, vein like splits, as if the stone itself has become infected with age. The resemblance to the veins on your hands does not escape you, nor does the irony. Both you and this palace are crumbling relics, holding on for reasons known only to God and the gossiping world outside. A soft, monotonous drip echoes from the corner where the roof leaks. Rain has crept in for as long as you can remember, and the servant's solution is always the same: move the bed, mop the floor, blame the weather. But the leak always returns, steady and patient, a rhythm as old as the stones themselves. You once found the sound comforting, a reminder that the world was moving outside your chamber. Now, it is simply another sign that time is winning its slow, relentless argument. Servants come and go, but with less urgency now. They are used to you being bedridden. Their movements are perfunctory, their conversations clipped. One of them, bolder than the rest, dares to look up at the ceiling along with you, following your gaze. She sees nothing but filth and neglect. You wonder if she thinks of you the same way, an old problem no one bothers to fix anymore. The tapestry on the far wall sags under its own weight. You used to admire its colors, but the images have faded into a blur of blues and browns, the edges gnawed by mice and moths. It tells a story, or once did, a scene of hunting and feasting, heroes in bright armor. You see now only the holes, the missing threads, the illusion of glory rotting from within. You realize that history is mostly holes, patched over by those who want to believe in the picture. You look for beauty and find only patterns of dust and decay. The sunlight that seeps through the window reveals floating motes that dance slowly, endlessly, never leaving the air. You think about how these specks of dust are older than you, how they have drifted through countless rooms, settled on the beds of kings and peasants alike, indifferent to the fates of both. The smell of damp stone and mildew fills your nose. Your blankets are changed every day, but they cannot mask the ancient, musty scent of a building that has soaked up centuries of sorrow, ambition, and death. Sometimes, when the wind is just right, you can almost catch a note of perfume from the garden outside, a ghostly echo of springtime, but it vanishes before you can breathe it in. The past is always just out of reach. Sitting in your chair by the window, you notice how the wooden frame has warped over the years, letting in drafts that chill your feet. Once, you might have summoned a carpenter to repair it, but now you lack both the will and the audience. Why patch what cannot be preserved? The cold is simply part of the furniture now, as permanent as the bruises on your hips and the ache in your back. A maid tries to cheer you with news from the kitchen, a fresh loaf of bread, a new recipe for stewed pears. You force a smile, but the words fall flat. You remember banquets in this very hall, roaring fires, minstrels, platters piled high with delicacies. You recall the laughter, the dance, the sparkle of jewels and candlelight. Now there is only the drip, 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 and the slow collapse of all things beautiful. Every evening, the candles are lit, their flames flickering uncertainly in the draught. The shadows they cast twist across the ceiling, turning the cracks into rivers, the stains into continents. You watch them change moment by moment, a map of decline. You understand, with a clarity that surprises you, that nothing endures except the traces of its own ruin. The world remembers the cracks, not the colors. Night is the worst. The wind howls through the walls, and the cold settles deeper into your bones. Mice scuttle in the darkness, making their own secret journeys from one hiding place to another. The palace, once so full of noise and life, now feels hollow, as if the heart of it has been removed and replaced with echoes. You lie in bed, listening to the endless, slow destruction of the world you inherited. For a moment, you imagine the day when the palace finally collapses, a storm tearing off the roof, the walls crumbling, the tapestries reduced to dust. Who will remember you then? Who will remember any of it? You wonder if the next generation will notice the cracks, or if they too will look up and see only themselves reflected in the ruin. In the quiet, you laugh, a low, bitter sound, barely more than a breath. The ceiling does not care. The cracks widen, the rain falls, and history inches forward, indifferent to queens and kingdoms alike. The days blur, each much like the one before, measured out in bowls and platters, in offerings meant to sustain a body that no longer wishes to be sustained. The court cooks send trays up with the seriousness of priests bearing relics. Their faces are tense, hoping you will eat, and, should you not, hoping no one will hold them responsible. Food, once the centerpiece of celebration, has become a dull, compulsory ritual, a daily inventory of everything you can no longer stomach. This morning, they bring you porridge, gray and gluey, laced with a few dried currants meant to evoke distant, expensive summers. The bowl is heavy, the spoon heavier still. You force down a mouthful and find that it tastes of dust and mold, as if the kitchen staff had scraped the floor for ingredients. Your teeth ache at the effort, your tongue rebels. You manage a few slow swallows, not out of hunger, but out of obligation. The nurse beams as if you have performed a miracle, as if you have just added another day to your dwindling supply. Next, a hunk of bread, its crust harder than the stones that built the palace. You prod it with your finger, half expecting it to move on its own. So alive is the sour odor that wafts from its ragged edge. When you break off a piece and place it in your mouth, it dissolves into grit. You remember, too clearly, the airy loaves of your youth, the honeyed rolls at banquets, bread so white and soft it seemed a kind of magic. This is a different sort of magic, the transformation of hope into disappointment. The wine is no better. Once it flowed in gold and ruby streams, filling the great hall with warmth and laughter. Now, your cup is filled with a bitter, sour liquid that clings to the tongue and leaves your lips puckered. The physician encourages you to drink it, insists it will strengthen your humors. You sip, as you always do, but the taste turns your stomach. Even your memories of wine are tinged with the rot of age. By midday, they bring you meat, if it can be called that. The slab of boiled beef glistens with unidentifiable fat, its color gray and its texture stringy. A layer of congealed grease coats your teeth. You chew slowly, unwillingly, every bite reminding you that this is not the feast of a queen, but the rations of a prisoner. The nurse encourages you to eat more, clucking her tongue with the self importance of one who has read a pamphlet on the humors and now considers herself a healer. You recall, with a mixture of longing and disgust, the banquets of your prime: pheasants, capons, rabbits in spiced sauces, tables groaning beneath platters of sweets. You remember the pride with which you would oversee the kitchens, the thrill of a new recipe imported from Gascony or Aragon, the delight in seeing your guests marvel at abundance. Now, abundance is a memory, and each bite is a struggle against nausea. The physician recommends a custard. It is set before you in a delicate dish, its top blackened and blistered from too much time near the coals. You try a spoonful, hoping for sweetness, but find instead the taste of eggs gone slightly sour, milk that should have been thrown away a week ago. You try not to grimace, but the nurse notices. She leans closer, her breath perfumed with garlic, and whispers, "It is good for you, my lady. You must eat. The king himself has asked after your appetite." You are almost amused. Once you could refuse any dish, and cooks would weep at the insult. Now, your every bite is a matter for state. You eat a little more, less for nourishment than for peace. The food sits in your stomach, heavy as regret. The day continues, each meal another trial. Supper is a weak broth, onions floating in greasy water, and a heel of cheese so hard you fear it may chip your tooth. You nibble the cheese, remembering the golden rounds from Normandy, the creamy wedges from the Loire, the scent of apples and hay. The cheese you have now tastes only of salt and the damp air of the cellar where it has been stored since last year's harvest. You set it aside, your appetite gone. Around you, the staff whispers. You see pity in their eyes, or is it impatience? Perhaps they are tired of your meals being returned uneaten, tired of watching the slow dance of decline. Perhaps they fear that your wasting away is contagious, that the rot in your food is the same as the rot in your blood. Night falls, and you are offered a cup of warm milk flavored with honey and cinnamon. You manage a sip, and for a moment, just a moment, you are transported to childhood, your mother's voice, the safety of a nursery, the promise of sleep. But the memory sours, the milk grows cold, and you are left alone with your hunger. You realize that you no longer eat to live, but to satisfy the expectations of others. Food has become another form of diplomacy, another battlefield where you must pretend to be something you are not. Healthy, hopeful, immortal. The world outside your chamber frets over your appetite, as if one more bowl of broth might delay the inevitable. You wonder, as you drift into a restless doze, how long it will be before they stop trying. How long before the trays grow smaller, the food less tempting, the concern replaced by calculation. You know that day will come, perhaps sooner than anyone expects. For now, you lie still, your mouth dry, your stomach aching, and think of banquets long past. The taste of rot lingers, stubborn and familiar, a reminder that all feasts must end. Time, once measured by royal banquets and coronations, by declarations and treaties, and the predictable cycle of the liturgical year, has become an indistinguishable muddle. The sun rises, or perhaps it does not. The candles are lit, or perhaps they have simply burned too low to be replaced. You drift between waking and sleeping, a passenger in your own body, unsure if the day is beginning or ending. You used to live by schedules, court meetings, private audiences, ceremonial prayers, the rhythm of the palace punctuated by bells, footsteps, the rustle of velvet, and the clink of goblets. Now, you live by the strange choreography of your caregivers. The nurse arrives to plump your pillows, the maid wipes your forehead, the physician presses his cold hands to your wrist and pronounces you as comfortable as could be expected. They come and go in cycles, but the cycles no longer mean anything. You try, sometimes, to count the hours. A beam of sunlight across the floor, a change in the shadows on your blankets, the lengthening gloom near the fireplace. These become your only clocks. But the sky is often overcast, the light gray and undifferentiated, and the heavy curtains are drawn against the chill. Even the bells of the chapel have lost their authority. You can never quite recall if that was the matins or the vesper chime. Their echoes drift through the palace, unanchored, reminders of a routine that now belongs to someone else. Nights are even worse. The darkness presses in, thick and clammy, as if the walls themselves have come closer to listen to your breathing. Sometimes you doze and wake, convinced that it is still the same hour, the same moment. The candles are changed, the fire is stoked, and yet the sensation of movement is gone. You could be asleep for a week or an hour. It hardly matters. Your dreams do not help. They are fragmented and feverish, looping endlessly through old memories and invented horrors. You see your father, pale and immovable, beckoning you to a council meeting that never ends. You hear your own voice, younger and sharper, issuing commands in a language you can barely remember. Sometimes you dream of falling out of a window, off a horse, into an endless well. You wake sweating, with no sense of how long you have been lost. Meals come and go, untethered from any hunger you might feel. Sometimes the food is hot, sometimes it is cold, left forgotten on a side table. The nurse chides you for not eating, but you no longer know if you are refusing breakfast or supper. You try to recall the names of the days: Sunday, Monday, Feast of Saint Who Knows, but they slip away, elusive as the taste of fresh bread. All you know for certain is that you are still here and that the world outside your window seems further away with every passing moment. Occasionally, someone tries to anchor you. A visiting priest reminds you that it is Wednesday, the day for confession. A courtier, stiff and polite, mentions that the king will arrive next week, though you cannot recall which king he means, or why his visit should matter. Your ladies in waiting chatter about the coming spring, but to you, every season feels the same: cold, damp, and interminable. Even your body conspires in this confusion. The fever ebbs and returns with no warning. Sometimes you feel almost alert, convinced that you might stand and walk to the window if only you tried. The sensation never lasts. More often, your limbs are heavy, your head foggy, your senses dulled by pain and fatigue. You sleep, wake, doze, and drift, never certain which is which. The physicians attempt to record your progress. They consult their ledgers and make careful notes: pulse rapid, color poor, appetite failing. They debate whether your condition is better or worse than yesterday, but you cannot tell them. You have lost yesterday. You are losing today even as it happens. The only certainty is that time, once so precious, has become a burden, a weight to be endured, not a treasure to be hoarded. Your chamber darkens early, or perhaps the candles are simply too few. The servants mutter about expenses, about the need to save wax and oil. You do not care. Light is for those who intend to read, to write, to live. You no longer have letters to send or ledgers to balance. The night wraps around you like a shroud, soft and suffocating. Sometimes you try to remember a specific day: a birthday, a coronation, the birth of your first child. The details are faded, smudged by years and illness. You remember the sensation, not the date, the thrill of power, the sudden swell of hope, the icy certainty of disappointment. The calendar is meaningless. There is only the steady drip of moments, indistinguishable and unremarkable, leading you further away from yourself. At last, you surrender. You stop trying to keep time, to mark the hours or count the days. You let the world flow past you, unmeasured, unchecked. There is a kind of freedom in it, a loosening of the old obligations. You are no longer a queen bound to ritual and schedule. You are simply a woman at the edge of forgetting, floating through the last days of a world that no longer cares for clocks or candles. You close your eyes, and the darkness welcomes you. Whether you sleep or wake, it is the same. Time, you realize, has left you behind. At first, you do not notice the sound. The palace is never truly silent, not even in these twilight days, and your ears have grown used to the background chorus of servants, the whimper of wind through ill-fitted glass, the shuffle and hush of feet outside your door. But then the city bell rings, a deep, slow toll, so heavy it seems to rattle the marrow in your bones. You pause, uncertain, and then you hear it again, one, two, three times. Each peal hangs in the air like a pronouncement. You have lived in palaces and castles all your life, but you have never been able to shut out the city. Paris, that great, unruly beast, always presses close to royal walls. It sends up its noise and stink, its prayers and curses, its poverty and excess, as if determined to be part of your story. You remember, faintly, the thrill of parades through crowded streets, the rush of faces pressed together for a glimpse of royalty. Now the city's voice comes to you as a bell, flat and mournful. You listen, and you know what the bell means. Death. It always means death. Sometimes it tolls for the passing of a prince, sometimes for a pestilence-stricken parish, sometimes for the thousands who die with no name and no one to mourn them. The bell cares little for rank. You have heard it at weddings and victories, but it never sounds so loud or so persistent as it does for loss. Today, the bell rings, and you sense, by instinct, by the way the air thickens in your chamber, that it is not for you, not yet. Still, you feel the echo in your own chest, the reminder that you are part of the same grim calculation. The world outside is full of fever and hunger, plague and violence. Sometimes, when the window is open, you can catch the tang of smoke and rot that signals another mass burial in the city's dirt. The bell is the only courtesy extended to the dead. A servant enters, face pale, arms full of fresh linens. She does not mention the bell, but her movements are hurried, her eyes darting toward the window as if she expects news to blow in with the breeze. You watch her, silent, as she changes your sheets and wipes the condensation from the window panes. When she leaves, she crosses herself, discreetly, but you see it. Perhaps she fears what the bell is calling closer. Not long after, a priest arrives, bearing a new amulet, some relic, a knuckle bone of a forgotten saint, sewn into a scrap of red velvet. He presses it into your hand and assures you it will keep the sickness at bay. You want to laugh at his certainty, but you lack the breath. Instead, You thank him, and he begins to mutter prayers. The words are a blur, but the cadence is familiar, a background noise like the bell itself. You listen without hope, as if listening might be enough. The bell rings again in the afternoon, and this time the sound is picked up by smaller chimes from the chapels within the palace. Their lighter voices rise and fall, echoing off the stone, each one a tiny promise that the world is paying attention. You almost believe it. You remember how, in your youth, you thought these bells were meant for you, your triumphs, your griefs, your processions. Now you know better. The bells are for everyone, and for no one in particular. They mark the passing of time, the weight of misfortune, the certainty of endings. As the evening darkens, the palace staff grows more nervous. You see them clutching talismans, sprinkling dried herbs at the door, whispering snatches of Latin they barely understand. You remember Riley, the last great plague, how everyone believed in garlic and vinegar, in hanging wool soaked in vinegar from every doorway. How little it helped, then or now. Death, you think, does not care for ritual. At supper, a physician tries to cheer you with talk of remedies, a new potion from Italy, a charm brought by a wandering friar, a promising salve made of rose petals and vinegar. He speaks as if the right combination of words and hopes might ward off the inevitable, but his eyes are tired. You listen, pretending to care, watching his lips move in the candlelight. The bell tolls again, faint and insistent, and you wonder who else is dying tonight. You begin to notice how all the palace routines have changed in response to the city's suffering. Doors are locked earlier, windows barred, visitors announced with more caution. Sentries patrol with hoods pulled low, their steps muffled. The kitchen boys are sent home early, the stable hands warned to keep to their quarters. You realize, with a sense of detachment, that the palace is afraid, not just for you, but for itself. That night, as you try to sleep, the bell tolls once more. You lie awake, counting the pauses, feeling the sound reverberate through the stone. The city mourns its dead with a great impersonal grief. It mourns you, too, in anticipation, as if preparing for the inevitable. In the silence between tolls, you imagine the streets below, the flicker of lanterns, the shrouded bodies, the prayers for mercy, the gnawing hunger that will not be appeased. You wonder, as you drift in and out of fever, if anyone will ring the bell for you. Will your death be marked with ceremony and tears, or will it be just another sound, lost in the great chorus of suffering? You suppose it does not matter. The bell will toll, the city will go on, and you will become just another story, told and retold until even your name is a kind of echo. But tonight, as the bells toll and the wind rattles your window, you feel strangely comforted. At least you are not alone in your dying. At least the city remembers, if only for a moment, that all of us, queen and beggar, child and crone, wait together for the final bell. With the city's bells tolling and your health sinking into the routines of decline, the true work of the living gathers pace just outside your chamber. The court no longer hides its impatience behind whispers and veiled glances. Your imminent absence has become an administrative certainty. They have waited long enough for you to die. The machinery of inheritance rumbles into life. At first, you hear the voices from behind the thick oak door, familiar names, familiar ambitions, cousins, nephews, and daughters, each armed with a sheaf of parchments or a cluster of whispered promises. They come to the palace not to mourn, but to audit. Your own granddaughter, or is it your niece? The relationships have grown so tangled, stands at the end of your bed with an air of distracted courtesy, her eyes already calculating the value of the tapestries behind your head. Their conversations are at first discreet. You hear snatches. The lands in Gascony will go to Charles, of course. Or the jewels, the emerald set. She promised it to me, did she not? There is no room for sentimentality in these lists, no trace of affection. Your name is recited as if you are already in the past tense. Sometimes they forget you are even in the room. An old minister appears, his hands trembling as he sorts through the documents spread across a side table. You recognize the crest pressed into the red wax, the formal opening lines, "To all whom these presents may come." Once, these papers would have signaled your will, your power to bestow or deny. Now, they are checklists to be ticked off before you vanish. You catch glimpses of the process in motion. The household steward lingers in the hallway, jotting down inventory as if making a shopping list. 2 silver goblets, 1 gold crucifix, 3 rings, one with a missing stone. Your personal maid, eyes darting, sorts your gowns into neat piles, pretending to air them for your comfort. You see the way her fingers linger on the velvet trim, the way she tucks a pin into her own sleeve when she thinks no one is looking. You almost want to tell her to take the whole dress. It will look better on someone who might actually wear it out of this room. Each new visitor brings news of another asset, another disputed right. The lands in Normandy, the dowry from your first marriage, the pensions promised by 3 different kings, even your books, those precious, handwritten manuscripts that have accompanied you from France to England and back, are now the subject of negotiation. One cousin, a cleric with ink-stained fingers, lingers over the illuminated pages, weighing the worth of your soul against the price fetched by rare vellum. No one asks about the letters hidden in the bottom of your chest, the ones tied with faded ribbons, written in a cipher you invented with a lover now long dead. Let them take the jewels and the tapestries. Let them squabble over titles and incomes. Some things, you decide, are best buried with the bones. You find yourself almost entertained by the spectacle. There is a bitter comedy in watching the mighty scramble for the scraps of your legacy. You hear them recount the story of the ring that once belonged to your mother, each remembering it differently, each convinced it was meant for them. You want to ask if they have ever noticed how alike they sound, but your voice is too weak, and the urge to interrupt has left you. Occasionally, a child is sent in to pay respects, a face full of freckles and boredom, clutching a posy of wilted flowers. They glance at you, unsure whether you are meant to be pitied, feared, or simply ignored. You reach out a trembling hand, not to bless, but to test if the world still offers warmth. Their hand is cool, the touch brief. Then they are gone, off to report that grandmother is sleeping, or the old queen looks terrible. They are correct on both counts. The legal men are the worst, their voices droning through the afternoon like a swarm of well fed flies. They speak of entails and debts, of disputed boundaries and royal writs, of how best to avoid the crown's greedy fingers. They never speak to you directly, and you suspect they would prefer, if you expired before tomorrow's session, to simplify the paperwork. You feel oddly obliged to disappoint them. At dusk, as the candlelight throws long shadows across the room, you catch your own reflection in the polished copper basin. You see not a queen, nor even a patient, but a ledger nearly balanced, assets soon to be dispersed, liabilities quietly erased. You remember being told, as a child, that a monarch's value is measured by what she leaves behind. Now you see the truth. You are worth only what can be divided, only what can be worn, consumed, or hidden away before the next generation arrives. The priest visits again in the evening, perhaps to offer spiritual comfort, perhaps to remind you of the only inheritance that cannot be seized. He finds you surrounded by ledgers and ledgers to be, by relations playing at civility and servants playing at respect. You almost ask him to say a prayer for your memory, but you know better. The only thing that will remain after the division of your goods are the stories others will tell, stories shaped by their needs, their greed, their boredom. Night falls, and with it, the parade of auditors dwindles. You are left alone with your dwindling breath and the slow certainty that your name will soon be written in someone else's hand. You close your eyes, listening to the muffled voices in the hall, the shuffling of papers, the soft clink of silver, counted and recounted. They will divide everything, you think, but they will never divide your regrets. You would think, after so many weeks of fading, that pain would have the decency to become background noise, a constant, perhaps, but one you might ignore, like the distant tolling of bells or the ceaseless chatter of the servants. Instead, it sharpens, becomes more insistent, rising and falling in waves. The more your body weakens, the more urgently it demands your attention, as if resenting your retreat from the world. You are no longer simply dying. You are performing your agony, and the court, the priests, even the servants, everyone is watching. Each morning brings a new ensemble of torments. The fever is a cruel master, alternately baking your skin and plunging you into chills so deep your teeth chatter uncontrollably, your limbs ache, the skin along your back is tender from too many days pressed against rough linen. Your mouth is parched, but water tastes wrong, heavy with the ghosts of all the other bodies it has passed through. Your breath rattles. You wonder, not for the first time, if your insides have begun to dissolve. Doctors and priests parade through your chamber with a kind of professional detachment. The physician arrives, eyes half lidded from lack of sleep or too much wine, and pokes at your swollen joints, pinches your skin, notes every change in the color of your tongue as if deciphering an ancient script. He tries new potions. One day, a syrup of violets, the next, a pungent draught of camphor and vinegar, each promised as a balm, each failing to soothe. The leeches return, black and insistent, their progress up your arm measured by the morbid curiosity of the apprentice. The blood they take is slow and dark, and you feel lighter only in the sense that you are less and less yourself. The priest follows, always with a new prayer, a new scrap of cloth, a new relic to place at your bedside. He offers you the comfort of ritual, the assurance that suffering purifies the soul. You want to believe him, if only to find meaning in your discomfort. But his voice grows muffled, as if coming from another room or another world. You watch the flicker of the candle in his hand and try to focus, but the flame doubles, splits, then dissolves. The pain crowds out all the old certainties. In these moments, you are as much a participant as a spectator. You watch your own body with a curious detachment, noting each symptom as a scholar might annotate the margin of a book. You observe how your fingers tremble when you reach for a cup, how your legs refuse to move, how even blinking feels like a labor. You have become a study in decline, a case for the next generation of healers to debate. You wish they would at least argue more loudly. Their discretion is stifling. The agony becomes communal. Your suffering draws an audience, and everyone brings their own expectations. The maids sigh in sympathy. The nurse clucks her tongue. The relatives visit and retreat quickly, grateful for any excuse to escape the oppressive air. Even the guards at your door grow quiet, their gossip hushed out of respect. Or is it fear? You are not sure anymore whether you are feared or pitied, and you are too tired to care. You are offered yet another remedy, this time a broth that smells of onions and despair. You force it down, then retch. The nurse soothes your brow, her hands cool and practiced. She mutters the names of saints under her breath, as if hoping one will answer and deliver you from your ordeal. You almost want to reassure her, to explain that pain is now your only remaining proof of existence, but you cannot muster the words. There are moments of delirium, flashes of memory, and confusion. At times, you are convinced that you are not dying at all, but being punished for some crime you no longer remember. The fever burns away your sense of place. The tapestries ripple with visions. The cracks in the ceiling pulse with secret light. You hear voices, some familiar, some strange, whispering advice, warning, and the soft, relentless question, "Are you ready?" You are not ready. Not yet. Agony, it turns out, is a powerful tether to the world. The days and nights merge. The pain ebbs and flows, sometimes retreating just long enough to leave you exhausted, trembling in its wake. When relief comes, it is only a pause, a chance for the next wave to gather strength. You count your breaths, then lose count, then start again. Every exhale feels like it might be your last. but every inhale proves you wrong. Visitors continue to arrive, always hopeful that the end is near, always leaving disappointed. Some come with genuine concern, others with impatience or curiosity. You try to offer them comfort, a smile, a word, but the effort is too great. You are reduced to nods and murmurs, a shell performing the rituals of departure. In the rare moments when you are alone, you try to bargain with your agony. You promise patience, humility, even forgiveness, if only the pain will ease. But suffering is indifferent to negotiation. It demands only that you endure. You think sometimes that death would be a mercy, that oblivion would be preferable to this endless rehearsal. And yet, when the pain recedes, you cling to life, if only for one more minute, one more breath, one more chance to feel anything at all. Your agony, you realize, is both punishment and privilege, the last proof that you are still here, still yourself, still stubbornly, painfully alive. In the long, lightless hours, when pain releases you only to the fever, and the world of waking grows as insubstantial as mist, your mind slips into dreams. At first, you resist. Sleep feels too much like surrender, and your pride, tattered but unbroken, clings to consciousness, as if you might still command your fate by the sheer force of will. But the body betrays where the mind persists. Exhaustion drags you down, and you are swept into a churning sea of visions. The dreams come in layers, thick and suffocating. In some, you are young again, running through palace gardens lit with a sunlight so golden it must be invention. You feel the grass under your bare feet, the joy of flight, the heady freedom of not yet being queen, not yet being burdened by alliances, betrayals, or the slow poison of regret. For a few moments, you believe you have returned. No aches, no chill, no weight of legacy or crown. You laugh, and the sound echoes against stone and sky. But the dreams change. The gardens fill with people, courtiers, servants, family, faces that shift and melt in the way of dreams, flickering between past and present, friend and enemy. You see your father, his features sharp and severe, his eyes both proud and distant. He beckons you to follow, but when you do, the garden becomes a hall of mirrors. In every reflection, you see yourself, not as you are, but as the world has made you, queen, mother, traitor, she-wolf. You try to smash the mirrors, but your arms pass through glass that offers no resistance, no comfort. You dream of banquets that spiral into chaos. Tables laden with food become funeral biers. Laughter turns to weeping, the music to a low, insistent dirge. Your guests become strangers with hollow eyes and open mouths, chanting your name not in praise, but accusation. You reach for your goblet and find it filled with blood. You spill it on your dress, and it spreads, blooming red through velvet and silk, impossible to hide. There are darker dreams, too. You are lost in endless corridors, the walls pressing closer, closing off each escape. The tapestries whisper, recounting the secrets you have kept, the lies you have told. The stones beneath your feet shift, opening into graves. You run, but every door leads to the same cold room, the same narrow bed. At last, you find yourself face to face with a younger version of yourself, a girl with clear eyes and steady hands, unburdened by history. She stares at you, unblinking, until you cannot bear the scrutiny. Other nights, your dreams are filled with the dead, lovers gone, friends betrayed, rivals and allies all gathered in a great smoky hall. They argue among themselves, voices overlapping in a cacophony of accusation and defense. Sometimes they turn on you, demanding answers for things you barely remember. Sometimes they seem to ignore you entirely, as if you are already gone. You shout, plead, protest, but your voice is little more than a breeze. Amidst it all, you sometimes see your mother. Her presence is less judgmental, more sorrowful. She sits beside you on a bench beneath a tree, singing a song whose words you can never recall upon waking. In these moments, you feel comfort, fleeting and cruel in its brevity. You want to remain, but the dream always changes, yanking you back into labyrinths of guilt and longing. There are moments when the dreams are not yours at all. You become a servant, rushing down torchlit hallways with bundles of linen. You become a physician, cataloging symptoms and reciting prayers. You are a mouse, darting behind the wainscoting, scavenging crumbs in the shadows of history. Your identity shifts and blurs. You realize, in the logic of dreams, that even now you are not truly your own. Sometimes you awaken between these visions, the world around you shaped by their residue. For a few heartbeats, you are convinced that the ceiling is breathing, that the crack in the wall is a mouth whispering secrets. You call for water, and the nurse appears, her face a mask of concern. She soothes you, wipes the sweat from your brow, assures you that you are safe. You almost believe her, but the dreams are never fully gone. You drift again, uncertain of where the dream ends and the fever begins. The air in your chamber is thick, every shadow stretched long and strange. You hear the wind moan through the stones. You hear footsteps that might be real or imagined. At times, you feel the old certainty. This is a test. This is a judgment. Other times, you are simply lost, adrift on a tide of memory and fear. When the sun finally rises, thin and pale through the grime on the glass, you are never sure whether you have truly returned. The faces that greet you in the morning, priest, nurse, servant, seem as insubstantial as the ghosts of your night. You are tired in every limb, as if you have traveled leagues in your sleep. You try to tell them what you have seen, but the words wither on your tongue. What can you say that the dead come calling, that your own past will not let you rest, that the dreams are worse than the pain itself? Instead, Ted, you let them smooth your blankets, bring you another bowl of thin broth, and pretend, just for today, that you have found rest. But when you close your eyes, you know that the dreams will be waiting. They always are. There is a moment, somewhere between the fading fever and the return of pain, when you remember you are supposed to say goodbye. It seems an important duty, a final performance in the endless play of royal life, yet one for which you have never rehearsed. Once you might have delivered grand speeches, overflowing with carefully measured sentiment. Now you struggle to find words that will carry the weight of all that has gone unsaid across decades. You are not sure who to summon first. The chamber is crowded with your past, relatives, companions, even enemies, but only a few remain who matter now, and most of them come and go as quickly as their schedules allow. There is your son, grown gray and harried by his own anxieties, a monarch in name and in habit. He visits with a formality that makes you ache for the child you once held, the small, stubborn boy who clung to your skirts and feared the dark. He sits by your bed and speaks of alliances and treaties as if these things could outlast your breath. You reach for his hand, and for a fleeting moment, he lets himself be your child again. You want to say, I am proud of you, or I forgive you, or forgive me. Instead, you say nothing. The words would only become part of history's clutter. Your daughters, scattered by marriage, scattered by time, send letters thick with hope and fear. They write of prayers offered, candles lit, and memories cherished. The handwriting varies, some lines trembling with sincerity, others composed with the practiced elegance of someone trained to mourn the living before they are dead. One daughter arrives in person, the chill of the road still clinging to her cloak. She sits with you, weeping quietly, dabbing her eyes with the same handkerchief she used at her husband's funeral years before. You wish you could offer her comfort, but all you have left is your presence, frail and flickering. A few friends, those rare, weathered souls who have survived the hazards of your affection, brave the sick room. One old confidant sits by your bedside, recounting scandals from the court with a mischievous glint in her eye. She tries to make you laugh, as she always has, but the sound is thin, your breath too shallow to sustain anything but a smile. She squeezes your hand and tells you that you have been brave even when you were reckless. You want to tell her she has been the same. For each goodbye, there is a rush of awkward ceremony. The priest offers final blessings, his words worn smooth by repetition. You recite the prayers along with him, not because you believe they will change your fate, but because the rhythm is soothing and the familiar sounds remind you of childhood when all the world seemed mysterious and waiting. The priest invites you to confession, and you try, but your sins are tangled and your memory is unreliable. You confess what you can and hope that it is enough. There are servants, too, who linger at your door, hoping for a word or a sign. The nurse, who has attended you faithfully through months of decline, kneels beside you, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. She thanks you for your kindness, a kindness you barely remember showing, but which she insists shaped her life. You want to assure her that her service has been noticed, that her care has mattered, but your tongue grows heavy, and the only gratitude you can offer is a squeeze of the hand. Some goodbyes are more complicated. A grandchild stands awkwardly at your bedside, torn between boredom and a vague sense of duty. He shifts from foot to foot, uncertain whether he should bow or kneel. You remember your own childhood, the terror and awe of being in the presence of someone dying. You want to ease his discomfort, but he flees before you can think of anything to say. Others do not come at all. Old friends from France, lovers who vanished into history, rivals who fell to other diseases, other courts. Their absence is its own kind of farewell, a gap in the fabric of your life that no words can mend. You recall their faces with surprising clarity, each one carrying its own burden of joy or disappointment. If they were here, you would apologize for some things, defend yourself against others, and laugh at the rest. You find, as you try to say goodbye, that most of what you want to say cannot be spoken. The weight of love, regret, pride, and disappointment does not lend itself to the language of deathbeds. You want to explain everything, but explanation is for the living. For the dying, there is only a hush, a sense of things left incomplete. You ask the priest for parchment and ink, intending to write a final letter. The quill trembles in your grasp, and the words refuse to arrange themselves into sense. You try to write your blessings, your secrets, your last wishes, but the ink blots and the lines run together. You set the letter aside, unfinished. Even in this last act, you are a queen, surrounded by ceremony, circumscribed by expectations. You wonder if anyone will remember this part, the faltering hand, the lost words, the longing to make peace with the world you are leaving. You suspect, not for the first time, that these goodbyes are more for the living than the dying. Night falls, and you are left with the silence that follows every farewell. You listen to the distant sounds of the palace, a door closing, the clink of a serving tray, a muffled sob behind a wall. You think, as you drift toward sleep, that there should be something more, some grand gesture to close the story. But you are too tired, and the world goes on. Your goodbyes are incomplete, like everything else. It arrives late, almost as an afterthought. You have spent weeks, months, distracted by pain, by memories, by the tedious rituals of sickness and succession. You have endured the parade of physicians and priests, the endless mutter of prayers, the division of your things, the awkward goodbyes. But fear, true and sharp, has been absent, hovering somewhere beyond the edges of your awareness, as if it belonged to someone else's story. Until now. At first, you cannot name it. You notice small changes, odd flickers in the behavior of the people around you. The nurse lingers longer at your bedside, her eyes red, her words gentler and fewer. The servants cross themselves openly when they enter, their faces pale and drawn. The maid sets extra candles on the table, and the priest returns with new icons, painted faces of saints who seem to peer at you with wary expectation. They begin to bring more candles, more icons, more relics, as if fortifying the room for a siege. The corners fill with the scent of beeswax and incense, sweet and suffocating. You hear whispers about the state of your soul, about what will happen after your last breath. For the first time, you realize how little all this has to do with your body and how much it concerns your departure, your passage from this world to whatever lies beyond. The priest explains the rituals again, his words slow and deliberate, as if speaking to a child. He assures you that your confessions are in order, that your soul will be received with mercy. He urges you to pray, to prepare yourself for what is to come. He speaks of the good death, of the comfort of faith, of the reward for patience and suffering. He repeats these phrases so often that they lose their meaning, reduced to mere sound. You try to believe him. You hold the cross he presses into your palm, feel the cool metal against your skin, murmur the prayers he prompts. But a cold certainty creeps in. The familiar rhythms of ritual no longer comfort you. The faces of the saints seem distant, unpersuaded by your fear. The words you repeat, "Deliver me, O Lord," ring hollow in the vaulted room. Night falls quickly, as if the sun itself is impatient for your departure. The candles flicker and gutter in the drafts. Shadows leap and retreat across the ceiling. You lie awake, unable to sleep, staring at the haloed faces around you, each one a silent reminder of the road ahead. Your chest tightens with a pressure that is not pain, but panic. You feel your breath shortening, your pulse racing, your mind scrambling for something, anything, to anchor you. It is then that you realize you are afraid, not of pain, not of the indignities of decline, but of what comes next. The world is slipping away, and you have no say in the matter. You are a queen who cannot command, a mother who cannot comfort, a woman who cannot even weep. You try to remember your own mother's death, to recall how she faced her end, but your memory betrays you. Was she brave? Was she terrified? You wish you had asked, but it never seemed urgent until now. You look for comfort among the living. The nurse holds your hand. The priest murmurs familiar words. The maid straightens your blankets. But all of them keep a little distance now, as if already mourning, as if you are more ghost than flesh. You see your fear reflected in their eyes, an unspoken admission that soon you will be gone and they will remain. The knowledge is bitter, as sharp as the edge of a knife. You remember all the things you have feared in your life: failure, disgrace, betrayal, poverty. Each one was tangible, a threat you could meet with action or cunning. This fear is different. It is cold, impersonal, vast. You cannot argue with it, cannot bargain, cannot plead. You are left only with the awareness of your own smallness, your own helplessness, in the face of what comes for all. The priest talks of judgment and mercy. You wonder which you will find. You wonder if there is anything left to forgive, or if you will simply vanish, your name a whisper, your story an entry in a ledger, your soul scattered with the dust in the corners of the palace. You try to pray, but the words will not come. You mouth the familiar phrases, but they are as lifeless as the relics stacked on your table. You want to believe that there is something waiting, something kinder than the slow erasure you feel now. But the fear persists. It is in your breath, in your blood, in the silence that follows each exhausted sigh. You wait for morning, as if the light might bring relief. You listen to the sounds of the palace, the soft weeping of a maid, the distant drone of a chant in the chapel, the restless shuffling of feet outside your door. Life goes on, but for you, each hour is heavier, each moment sharper, each breath an act of courage. When sleep comes, it is shallow and uncertain. The fear lingers, weaving itself through your dreams, a cold thread in the fabric of your last days. You realize, at last, that dying is not the end of pain, but the beginning of a new kind of terror, the terror of leaving, of being forgotten, of facing the darkness alone. But there is no choice. You have played your part, recited your lines, kept your secrets. Now you must go, whether you are ready or not. It is not your illness that truly signals the end, nor even the rituals that have multiplied in your chamber. It is the way the living begin to withdraw from you, as if the shadow of your departure is already spreading across the floor, cooling every conversation and softening every glance. You have become the ghost at your own bedside, present and accounted for, yet increasingly peripheral in the world that continues without you. You watch as the familiar routines of care and comfort begin to shift. The nurse, who used to bustle in briskly, now enters your chamber with hesitant steps, as though she fears disturbing something sacred, or perhaps provoking whatever it is that waits for you on the other side. She keeps her voice low, her words measured, and she meets your eyes less often, as if too much contact might invite fate to take her as well. When she wipes your brow or adjusts your pillow, her hands linger only for a moment before retreating, always retreating. The servants, once eager to please, now move about your room in near silence. They perform their duties as if you are already absent, folding linens, dusting shelves, carrying away bowls of untouched broth. They rarely speak, and when they do, it is to one another, never to you. You overhear their whispers in the hallway, their voices subdued and tinged with unease. "She is fading," you hear one say. "Not long now," says another, as though discussing the weather. Even the air seems different. The room is heavy with the scent of beeswax, incense, and a vague chemical tang you suspect comes from the latest physician's remedies. The windows are kept open more often, not for your comfort, but to clear the air. You notice your favorite tapestries disappearing from the walls, sent away to be cleaned, they say, or perhaps quietly hidden before your heirs arrive. The little comforts of your life, the objects that once marked your territory as queen and woman, are slowly stripped away. In their place, you find only the accoutrements of dying: candles, crosses, bottles of oil, clean white linens stacked with clinical precision. Relatives appear more rarely now, and never alone. They enter with solemn expressions and speak in soft, formal tones, as if performing for an audience that includes more than just you. Some cannot meet your gaze. Others seem to regard you with a distant, almost scholarly curiosity. You are no longer a participant in their ambitions and arguments, but an obstacle to be respected, briefly, before being removed. Occasionally, a younger family member is sent in with flowers or a message, their nervous glances darting from your face to the door, desperate to escape the gravity of your decline. The physician, once a fixture at your bedside, now spends less time with you. His visits are shorter, his questions fewer. He no longer promises recovery or even comfort. Instead, he offers platitudes. You are as well as can be expected. We are doing all we can, while carefully avoiding any specifics. When he leaves, he speaks in hushed tones to the nurse in the hallway, shaking his head, already thinking of his next patient. You sense relief in his departure. The priest, too, changes. He comes more often, yes, but his prayers are shorter, his blessings more rote. He seems less interested in your soul than in ensuring that all rituals are properly observed. His eyes slide past you to the relics on your table, the candles in the corners, the position of the icons. When he speaks to you, it is with the faint, mechanical enthusiasm of someone who has performed this duty too many times before. Even the palace itself seems to respond to your waning presence. Corridors that once echoed with the sounds of laughter and gossip are quiet now, as if the building holds its breath along with you. The staff goes about their business in the lower halls, preparing for the inevitable transition. You overhear the steward discussing the allocation of rooms, the disposition of your wardrobe, the inventory of the pantry. Life is reorganizing itself around your absence, as if you have already left. You are struck in your clearer moments by the careful indifference of it all. There is no malice, no celebration, not even much grief, only the slow, methodical process of detachment. It is as if you have entered a liminal state, halfway between memory and irrelevance. You are mourned in advance with the practical efficiency of those who have seen too many pass before you. Your role now is to recede gracefully, to make space for whatever and whoever will come next. The distance is not entirely unwelcome. With each layer of ritual and routine peeled away, you find yourself left alone, no longer required to perform the duties of queen or matriarch or even patient. You are simply yourself, the sum of your aches and thoughts and fading memories. It is a kind of clarity, a thinning of the world that leaves only the essentials behind. As night falls, the candles gutter and the room grows quiet. The nurse says good night in a whisper, careful not to wake you if you have already drifted into sleep. The servants close the door softly, as though sealing in your last warmth. You are alone, truly alone, for the first time in your life, and you realize in that silence that the living have already left you behind. You are the last to know you are gone. It is a peculiar kind of revelation, the knowledge that the world continues as if nothing significant is changing, even as you edge closer to the place where your name will be just a line in someone else's account. In the hush of your chamber, the palace feels static, suspended in a dim twilight between your last breath and the first shout of the next generation. Yet, if you listen, truly listen, you can hear the heartbeat of a world that will not pause for your leaving. At first, you notice it in small things. The fire in your hearth is tended less carefully, allowed to sputter low while the servants busy themselves elsewhere. The nurse leaves your bedside to fetch a parcel and does not hurry back. You hear the jangle of keys as the steward unlocks storerooms, issuing orders for the coming days. Linen, flour, wax. These matter more to the household now than the state of your pulse. The daily machinery of palace life is cranking into a new rhythm, and you are less and less its reason. You realize, in a moment of cold clarity, that your absence is anticipated everywhere. The cooks are already preparing for the meals that will follow your death. The simple fare for mourning, the better cuts saved for when the household resumes its old feasting. You overhear a stable boy ask whether the horses should be readied for a funeral procession or for the return of the heirs. The gardener has begun to cut back the roses outside your window, their blooms unnecessary now, their scent wasted on the dying. Servants who once hovered now slip away to attend to more pressing matters. They do not expect you to need much, and truth be told, you do not. Their conversations, once polite and careful in your presence, grow less guarded. Through the cracked door, you catch snippets of the old palace dramas, so and so's love affair, the purchase of a new pan, the fortunes of a neighbor's cousin. Your dying is only a faint undertone in the great clamor of practical life. You see it in the faces of your relatives too. Their visits grow shorter, their excuses more elaborate. There are negotiations to attend, alliances to cement, estates to appraise. Your name appears at the edge of these discussions, a reminder that soon a dozen decisions will be made in your absence. They do not discuss you directly. Instead, you are a pause, a sigh, a silence in the conversation, quickly filled with something more pressing. They do not mean to be cruel, it is simply that your relevance is ending. The court is eager for the next chapter, the next contest, the next queen or king to bend the story to their own will. From your bed, you hear the music of life proceeding in other rooms. Somewhere, a young maid sings as she polishes silver, her song a cheerful, wordless tune. The sound of laughter filters up from the kitchens as the staff share a joke. Outside, the bells mark the passing hours, indifferent to the narrowing of your world. You remember how, years ago, your own laughter filled these halls, how your footsteps echoed and your commands were obeyed instantly. Now, the only echo is your memory, faint and fading. You catch glimpses of your former self in the rhythm of these days, but they no longer feel real. The Isabella who commanded, who plotted, who charmed and condemned and forgave, is a ghost in the corner of your vision. The palace is shedding you as surely as you are shedding your breath. You feel, at times, an almost perverse sense of relief. The burden of being someone necessary, someone at the center, is lifting from your shoulders. You are no longer responsible for the future. The future is busy with its own business. You wonder sometimes what will be remembered of you. You imagine the hurried rewriting of ledgers, the reassignment of rooms, the removal of your portrait from the main hall. Your legacy, so carefully constructed, will become the property of others. Each item, each memory, each decision sifted and claimed. You suspect the stories will be embellished or diminished, depending on the needs of the teller. Perhaps there will be a mass in your name, perhaps not. Perhaps someone will remember your wit or your cruelty, your triumphs or your mistakes. It hardly matters now. As you lie still, you find yourself detached, almost amused by how little your absence will matter. You think of the wars and treaties, the marriages you arranged, the feasts and funerals. All of it recedes, swallowed by the ceaseless tide of everyday life. You feel yourself dissolving, not just in flesh, but in relevance. It is humbling and strangely peaceful. Night falls, and the palace sleeps. You hear the snore of a guard outside your door, the distant whinny of a horse in the stable, the creak of a shutter in the wind. You close your eyes and listen, not for the footsteps of family or the prayers of the priest, but for the soft murmur of a world unconcerned with your last hours. The world goes on, as it always has, as it always will. You are not bitter. You have been the center, and you have been the shadow. Now you are simply part of the silence, a breath held before the next word is spoken. The final days are quieter than you expected. There is no drama, no sudden collapse, just the slow retreat of the world, color draining from the tapestries, voices fading to a distant hush, the persistent pain softening into a kind of numbness. You are neither fully awake nor entirely lost to sleep. The distinction hardly matters now. You float as if on some invisible current through hours that no longer answer to the clock. Your room is full, but also empty. There are people around you, nurses, servants, a priest, a stray relative or two, but they move softly, as though afraid to disturb you, or perhaps afraid to be present when the last veil falls. Their faces flicker in the candlelight, pale and uncertain. The air smells of beeswax, sweat, and stale herbs. The chamber is crowded with relics, silver crosses, wooden beads, tokens of saints with names you have forgotten. Even the windows have been covered, as if darkness itself might offer some final mercy. You feel yourself drifting, untethered by obligation. There are still voices, but they do not address you directly. The priest's prayers weave through the silence, monotone and reassuring. Their words meant more for those who remain than for the soul preparing to leave. You hear snatches of Latin, pro pace, pro misericordia, pro anima, that wash over you like the tide. You do not remember all the responses, but your lips form the shapes out of habit. Someone sobs softly at the foot of your bed. You cannot see who it is. You want to offer comfort, to say something dignified, but you find you have nothing left to give. You feel oddly light, almost weightless. The pain in your chest is distant, the ache in your bones just a memory. There is only breath, slow and shallow, each one a question asked and answered in the same instant. You wonder, as you always have, if this is how kings die, or peasants, or anyone at all. The nurse wipes your brow for the last time. Her hands are cool, her voice a whisper. She tells you it will not be long now. You try to nod, to thank her, but your muscles will not obey. Even your thoughts are beginning to loosen their grip, as if you are letting go of a rope you have held too tightly for too long. The priest leans close, offering the last rites. His breath is warm on your cheek, the oil cool on your forehead. He recites the prayers of absolution, his voice unsteady only for a moment. You realize, with a flicker of dark amusement, that you are the only one in the room who does not seem to be waiting for something. For you, there is only a spreading stillness, the strange peace that comes when all debts are paid, all roles concluded. You hear the whisper of the nurse as she counts your breaths. She thinks you cannot hear her, but you can. Each number slower, each pause longer. At the door, a servant quietly snuffs out candles, as if to help you find your way to darkness. There are no more orders to give, no more courtiers to impress. The affairs of the palace recede to another world, as distant now as your childhood. It is not as frightening as you once imagined. There is no vision, no thunder, no parade of ancestors. You are not visited by angels or devils. There is only this narrowing, the world outside your bed fading, the voices a murmur, the light aglow through closed eyes. You remember, for a moment, the scent of spring air, the laughter of a child, the warmth of sun on your face. Then even those fade. The priest marks the hour of your passing in a book. The nurse closes your eyes, murmuring a prayer of her own. Someone whispers your name once, and then there is only silence. For a heartbeat, perhaps two, you are everywhere, in the trembling hands of those who remain, in the breathless hush of the chamber, in the echo of a prayer spoken for the thousandth time. Then nothing. For you, the story ends here. For them, the world resumes, the door opens, footsteps return, the business of life picks up its thread. You have become an absence, a reason for new decisions, a handful of words to be added to the records. And outside, in the corridors and beyond the stone walls, the world is already moving on. For all the elaborate ritual, the candles and prayers, the careful division of your worldly goods, and the whispered farewells, your death proves to be an oddly unremarkable affair. The next morning, your room is no longer a sick room, but a site of logistics. Maids move with a new urgency, stripping linens and sweeping the floor. The nurse, hollow-eyed but already half forgotten, hands over the last of your medicines to a junior servant. The air, thick with the scent of beeswax and incense, fades beneath the sharper tang of vinegar and soap. Already the living are eager to scrub away every trace of your decline. In the corridor outside, voices are hushed at first, out of habit or perhaps some lingering sense of propriety. But soon even this caution slips. Courtiers argue in low tones about the details of your burial, which relic should be placed in your hands, which procession route will draw the largest crowd. A minister disputes the reading of your will. An old lady in waiting sobs quietly into a lace handkerchief before straightening her back and returning to the world of obligations and alliances. In the city, the news travels quickly, borne on the wings of gossip and rumor. In some quarters, you are remembered as the she wolf of France, the schemer, the queen who toppled kings and sowed scandal across two realms. In others, you are recalled as a pious widow, a relic yourself, drifting gently toward the afterlife on a tide of prayer and confession. In every telling, your faults are exaggerated, your virtues debated, your secrets traded like coin. You become, almost overnight, the subject of other people's stories. The palace prepares for mourning with all the grim efficiency of an institution that has practiced this dance many times before. Drapes are drawn, black cloth hung in the chapel. Priests rehearse the funeral rites, their Latin echoing through empty corridors. Your portrait is covered, your name invoked in sermons by those who never truly knew you. The kitchens serve broth and bread to the household, saving the richer fare for the banquets to follow. In the garden, the gardener returns to his roses, indifferent to the solemnity in the air. Servants, freed from the peculiar intimacy of caring for the dying, trade stories of your last days. Some recall your sharp tongue, others, your rare moments of kindness. Most speak only of the relief that comes with the end of a long vigil. A few pocket small tokens, rings, scarves, a comb left on the dressing table, treasures whose value lies not in gold, but in the quiet act of remembering. The scribes get to work. Your passing is noted in neat, unfeeling lines. On the 22nd day, the Lady Isabella, Dowager Queen of England, and daughter of Philip the Fair, departed this life, having confessed her sins and received the sacraments. There will be, perhaps, a longer entry in the Chronicles, a list of titles, alliances, children, betrayals. It will read as a record of facts, not feelings. The ink dries quickly, the world adjusts. Heirs step forward to claim their portions. Disputes flare over lands, dowries, jewelry. Your children mourn you, or try to, between audiences and urgent counsels. A cousin in France writes a letter thick with platitudes. Your household, half dismantled before your last breath, is now officially dispersed. New names take over your rooms, your duties, your legacy. Within days, life in the palace returns to its old, indifferent rhythm. The bells ring for someone else. The court gossips about a scandal, a marriage, a new alliance brewing in the wings. The wind rattles the window panes as it always has. Your absence is an afterthought, a void quickly filled by the next necessity. The city, too, forgets you faster than you thought possible. Your story becomes a lesson, a warning, an anecdote for dinner tables and sermons. The poor remember your name only when it is useful, the rich only when it flatters their own ambitions. Your portrait is hung in a dark hallway, your letters are locked away, your treasures scattered. You are finally what all rulers become, a collection of contradictions, faded glory, and borrowed wisdom. History is never fair. It trims the fat, sharpens the edges, simplifies what was complicated. You are no longer a person, only a figure, a symbol, a curiosity, a subject for the next chronicler's dull and dusty lines. Your doubts, your hungers, your nights of fear and longing are no one's concern. The world turns on, and you, once the center of courts and kingdoms, are now only a memory, and soon enough, not even that. In the end, the irony is sharp. Your death is more ordinary than anyone's imagination, your legacy more fragile than any jewel you ever wore. So too will those who follow you vanish, piece by piece, until the story is all that remains, a story rewritten, retold, and eventually forgotten. The bells ring, the candles gutter, the palace endures. You have become history, and history, as you know too well, always moves on.